Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you're calling from. This is Student Debt Crisis Center. I'm Natalia Abrams. You're joining us for a student loan repayment webinar. We will also be discussing today's major breaking news on the SAVE program. And with that, we're going to get started. So, as I mentioned, we are a Student Debt Crisis Center. We are a national advocacy organization with more than 2 million supporters, constantly calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and an end to the student debt crisis. We want to thank a quick just thank you to our funders. This programming was funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. We want to thank them for their support. However, this information is solely provided from Student Debt Crisis alone and does not reflect the opinions of the foundation. So I see some hand raises, and I just want to mention that we have a lot to cover today. So please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. We have the entire Student Debt Crisis team on and available to answer your questions to the best of our ability. We will do our best to answer as many questions as possible. You're going to hear, I don't know a lot today. I'm just going to give you a heads up. We're still untangling this information. And while there was a major court decision, which I'm sure a lot of folks are joining us about with the SAVE program, nothing with your loan has changed today. So just to let you know that. Any information shared on today's clinic pertains to the current guidelines and rules as of today. Today is Tuesday, December 9th, 2025. This is what we know today. This is where the regulations and the policy stands as of today. In addition, for all those attending this workshop, a recording will be provided via email within about 24 hours to anyone who is attending this workshop. So what we will cover, as I mentioned, we will cover the SAVE plan, but what type of loan do you have? What is happening with the SAVE plan and public service loan forgiveness? What are the best repayment plan options? What can you do if you're behind on payments? What are the loan forgiveness options? A quick reminder, we are not financial counselors nor attorneys. We are advocates and experts here to help. Let's all untangle this information together. Excuse me, pardon my small cold. Updates on the SAVE plan. So if you received our email today, the Department of Education and the Missouri came to an agreement or a settlement to end the SAVE plan. So that was the breaking news headline, that the SAVE plan is coming to an end. We will know more in the coming weeks, but this is also pending court approval. However, on a bad note, I will say that there's nobody fighting for, besides advocates, there's nobody on the government level that is fighting for the SAVE plan. So this is what we've been fearing for the last couple of years, ever since the lawsuit. I think it's been that long, ever since the SAVE program has been blocked. And many people have been on this long-term forbearance where they have not been making payments. And that is going to come to an end in the coming weeks, months, but it's not going to be as long as 2028. So here's what we know. We know this is going away for nearly, excuse me, 8 million folks, 7.6 million to be exact, have enrolled in the SAVE program and are currently in a forbearance, which means you have not been required to make a payment. And up until this August, you also were not paying interest, but interest was turned on August 1st. No one can enroll in SAVE. They said that today. That's not new news. For months now, there have been no new enrollments in SAVE. Here's what we don't know, and not just we, but from the information given to us from the Department of Education, here's what nobody knows. We don't know the timeline. We don't know when you'll be required to hop into another repayment plan. Sorry about that. Let's go forward. Okay. We don't know if it's going to be automatic, whether you'll be placed into a different repayment plan, such as income-based repayment, the newer WRAP plan or the standard plan, whether you'll have an opt-out period, what plan you'll be placed into. There's a lot of unknowns. We also do not know if people will be able to use the PSLF buyback. We've been receiving questions from borrowers on this for time spent in Spain in the SAVE program. Unfortunately, we have been hearing some rumblings that that time might not be able to be bought back. Again, nothing is clear. The only thing is clear is that a settlement, kind of a backroom deal settlement between Missouri and the Department of Education has been reached to end the SAVE plan. And so now we know this is going to be in the coming months versus in the coming years. So they, it wasn't, the big question wasn't SAVE supposed to go away by July 1st of 2028? This would we if you've been on our workshops before, we've been talking about how SAVE has been attacked in multiple ways, both legally via the courts and legislatively versus the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. So it's going to go away no matter what. Now we know it's going to be sooner rather than later. The OBBA stated SAVE along with the ICR and pay would phase out July 1st, 2028. We know that's going to be much sooner. I will say one silver lining is that if you're looking to get forgiveness under the ICR and pay plan because of our friends at AFT and their lawsuit, that is still safe. We want you to be careful with misinformation. We've heard from many of you that loan servicers are saying that you need to consolidate to get out of the SAVE plan. That is categorically incorrect. If you are in the SAVE plan, you have a direct loan, which means that you can apply for income contingent repayment, pay as you earn, or income-based repayment. And don't worry, we will go over all of the options or additional repayment plans that are available to you if you choose to get out of the SAVE program. What you can do and should do right now, you should know what repayment plan you're in. If you're not in SAVE, what we're talking about right now does not pertain to you. If you and I know many people that think they're in SAVE, and then we look at their account and they're actually in income-based repayment. We strongly encourage you to use the loan simulator, and my team will provide links, or the EdCap tool to see what plan you are applicable for and what your monthly payment is. That doesn't mean you have to do it today. It just means that, arm yourself with information. Whether or not you stay in SAVE is still a deeply personal choice for you as a borrower. Even 1 month of saving can be everything to a borrower. And because this is still pending court decision, because we don't know the timeline, it's not that tomorrow or even 2 weeks from now, I would say it's not that before the end of the year, you're going to have to make a payment. So just arm yourself with information, know what plan to change into. Now, if you are close to the end with PSLF or public service loan forgiveness credits matter to you, you may want to consider getting out of SAVE. If you are very low income or out of a job right now, and you can secure a $0 payment. And how would you know that? You know that by going through the loan simulator. Then you may want to consider getting out of SAVE. The fear that I personally have is that, at the 7.6 million people all moving at once, it's going to cause an even worse scenario with the backlog of applications that they already have at the Department of Education. So with that, we'll get into more federal updates. Very sorry to see this go. We know many of you that may have seen your incomes increase, but we're dealing with mass inflation and high cost of living, so it doesn't mean you have more money in your pocket. May make too much money for a repayment program, and the standard program will be one of the only options for you. But again, through this workshop, we will talk about the graduated repayment and extended graduated repayment plans if the IDR programs don't work for you. So going on to more updates. I know that was a lot on SAVE, but with income-driven repayment forgiveness, Loan discharges will be issued, and I said this before, for all folks enrolled in income contingent repayment, income-based repayment, and pay-as-you-earn, who reach income-driven forgiveness threshold due to the recent court ruling. So everyone other than SAFE can get their loans discharged if they've reached the amount of time that they need to be in the program. Additional action is required for SAVE folks who have met the IDR threshold. So if you're in SAVE right now and you have reached the amount of time you need to be in, you need to switch to income-based repayment, pay-as-you-earn, or ICR, or income contingent repayment, in order to see those loans canceled. If you meet the threshold by December, not having your loans actually canceled, like getting the money back into your account, but if you've met the required amount of time by the end of this year, December 31st, 2025, your loan forgiveness will be tax-free at the federal level. Even if you get it discharged next year, as long as you've reached your credit count by the end of this year, which is like 2.5 weeks away, you will not be taxed. Unfortunately, that provision is ending. It's a COVID provision that's been here for over 5 years, is ending on December 31st of this year. Okay, I know that's a lot. I'm going to toss it to Sabrina Ashley from our team to go over student loans and type of services.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalia. And just a reminder for folks, if you are not on our mailing list or you missed the email, we will be also holding a workshop all about the upcoming changes to the student loan workshop or system on December 16th. So we can drop that in the chat and you all can sign up for that. Those will have more of the details on the federal updates that we just discussed.
Thank you, Sabrina. And just to add, if we get any more updates, which we're scrambling to do on the SAVE program, we'll be providing that for you next week.
Yes. Awesome. So let's get into student loan types and servicers. So we have this chart here for you all. If you're not sure what type of loan you have, we are only going to be going over federal student loans tonight, no private student loans. And you can see that we have three main types of federal loans. So we have direct loans, Perkins loans, and FELP loans, or Federal Family Education Loan Program loans. So Perkins loans and FELP loans are no longer issued. Perkins loans were held by institutions, so places like your college, and FELP loans were commercially held or held by the Department of Education. And there are several different types of FELP loans, like subsidized, unsubsidized, FELP Plus, FELP Consolidation, and then FELP Parent Plus. So in a couple of minutes, when we go through the studentaid.gov website, you'll be able to identify what kinds of loans you have. We also have direct loans, and those loans are currently the only ones that are issued. They're newer loans. There's also several types, so direct subsidized and unsubsidized, direct graduate plus loans, direct parent plus loans, and then direct consolidation loans. And the only difference here between subsidized or unsubsidized loans are just whether your loan is accruing interest when you are in school. It is important to note here we have direct graduate plus loans highlighted in red. Those will no longer be issued starting on July 1st, 2026, but you will, if you have previously needed those loans and you plan to take out more, or you just plan to start taking out those types of loans, you'll have access to the direct unsubsidized loans. Okay, so when you have a loan, you always have a servicer. So we've listed federal loan servicers here on the left-hand side, and these are hopefully familiar to a lot of you. We have Ed Financial, Aidvantage, CRI, Mohila, Nelnet, Heartland, AES, and then Sloan Servicing. We also have listed some private lenders for you all because it can be hard to understand who holds your loan and what type of loan you have. So if you have a loan with someone like Discover or Navient, maybe SoFi, Earnest, College Ave, any of these lenders on the right-hand side, you most likely have a private loan with the exception of Mohila. You can see that they show up on the federal and private sides here. So on these next slides, we'll go over how to really determine if your loan is federal. Okay, so using studentaid.gov, this is where you want to go with any questions about your federal loans or any programs that are available to you. You can head directly to www.studentaid.gov. Please type that directly into your browser. There can unfortunately be some scams out there, so if you Google this website, you might go to a site that might have malicious intents. If you do have trouble logging in or resetting your password, you can call the number here. We've listed 1-800-433-3243, or you can head online to studentaid.gov here, and they can help you reset your password. You might have to enter some additional information, but you can get back into your account. So once you've logged into your account, you'll be presented with your dashboard. This is sort of your home page. Your profile icon in the top right is where you can hop from page to page or see your notifications. This also has really important information like your upcoming payments, your servicer, any due dates that you may have. It'll link directly out to your servicer website. And then it also breaks down your aid with your loans and your grants. You can see it's a little cut off here at the bottom. And this is where you want to hit view details because we want to look into your loans. So we're going to go ahead and hit view details, and then you're going to head to this next screenshot. And you can see that this person has a total of 11 loans. And it does break it down a little bit here. We can see the principal and the interest, but we really want to know what the loans are. So we're going to hit view breakdown again. And then we're going to get to this next screen. And this is going to list out your loans by servicer. So you can see that this person is serviced by Mohila and Arcadia University. And on the bottom here with Arcadia University, you can see that that is an institution. So that was previously a Perkins loan. It has a total balance of 0, so it was either consolidated or paid off. So we're going to once again hit view loans to break down these Mohila loans. And this is where we can finally get to what types of loans they have. This person has subsidized and unsubsidized loans. You can see that when they took out their loan, what their interest rate is, and then also the total balance. And then the most important thing here in the middle is what repayment plan they're on. This is where you all can find out if you're on the SAVE plan or if you're maybe in the standard plan. If you are in the SAVE plan, it's going to say in forbearance for your loan status. So that's how you know that you are in the SAVE forbearance. If you're in a different plan, you are most likely in repayment. All right, on this next slide. I think we gotta go the other way here. Yep, just one more slide forward. Okay, student loan repayment options. We are going to go over different repayment options in this chart. So we have the standard plan up top. And this is the plan that everyone is put into if they don't apply for a different plan. And then we have what's called fixed alternative plans, which are the graduated, extended, and extended graduated repayment plans. And then we have income-driven repayment plans. And I've also already seen several questions in the chat. Income-driven repayment plans, we'll go over this again, but that is the overall term for the program. And then we have ICR or income contingent repayment. We have old and new income-based repayment. we have pay or pay as you earn, and then the save plan as types of income-driven repayment plans. And we do have the save plan highlighted in red, as we went over earlier. No one can apply or enroll in the save plan, and it is going away. And not everyone is eligible for IBR or pay. However, we should all look out for updates regarding the IBR plan because they are taking away the financial hardship piece there. And again, we'll go over that more later. If you are in the standard plan, some servicers call that the level plan. So if you see level plan on your account, then that means that you're in the standard plan. So the 10-year standard plan, again, is what everyone is initially placed into. It's a 10-year repayment plan with fixed monthly payments. It's available to folks with unconsolidated loans or consolidated loans with a balance that is less than $7,500. There are definitely more affordable options for borrowers who may be struggling, which we'll go over on this workshop. And it's important to note that there's no loan forgiveness aspect to this plan. You will pay the entire amount in 10 years. However, the 10-year standard plan does count towards PSLF. You might want to consider the 10-year standard plan if you want to make a dent in your debt, if you're worried about any interest capitalizing on your account, or if you just want to get out of the system a little bit more quickly and you can afford the payments. Next, we have the 30-year standard plan. And these are for loans that consolidation loans, and it's based off of your loan balance. So you can see the breakdown here on the screenshot. So the monthly payments are calculated in a way that the payoff repayment period will be within those time increments. If you do have consolidated loans, your repayment period could be up to 30 years. Again, it's based off of your loan balance. And again, there's no loan forgiveness aspect to this plan. And the 30-year standard plan, or if you do have consolidated loans and you're in the standard plan, it will not count towards IDR forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness. Okay, so the fixed alternative plans here, we have extended, graduated, and extended graduated plans. First, the extended plan, we have all loans are eligible for this plan except for Perkins loans. However, you can consolidate those Perkins loans into direct consolidation loans and become eligible for the plan. The payments here are fixed with a repayment timeline of 25 years, and only folks with balances higher than $30,000 are eligible for this plan. For the graduated plan, we have the same eligibility requirement. The repayment timeline here is going to be a little different for each loan type. So FEL and direct consolidation loans will be 10 to 30 years based off of your loan balance. And then all other loans will be a 10-year repayment timeline. And then payments start low and increase every 2 years. And then the extended graduated repayment plan is a combination of the extended and graduated plans. So the loan eligibility again is the same. However, the repayment timeline is 25 years and the payment amount goes up every 2 years. So they start low and increase. And then again, only folks with balances higher than $30,000 are eligible for that plan. Okay, so the income-driven repayment plans we're going to go over with Sabrina, so I'll go ahead and pass it over to her.
Thanks, Sabrina Ashley. And thank you all for your questions and for your patience as we try and navigate all of them in the Q&A. So with that, let's jump into the IDR plans. So what are the benefits of IDR plans? So IDR or income-driven repayment plans, they are monthly payments that are calculated as a percentage of discretionary income. So it's going to be based on your income and your family size, not your loan amount. For folks who have really high balances and lower incomes, this is an especially helpful option when it comes to repayment. Now, the monthly payments may be more affordable than the standard plan and could also help to prevent default and delinquency. These options are also helpful for folks with lower incomes, those who are unemployed, or those who have decreased incomes, because if you're making $0, your payment will reflect that and also be $0. Now, I've seen a couple questions here in the Q&A about loan forgiveness and how that works. So when it comes to IDR or income-driven repayment forgiveness, loan forgiveness is possible after payments are made for a total of 20 or 25 years, and that is all dependent on the plan, not the loan type. So if your repayment plan has a timeline of 20 years in which you have to pay, you will need 240 IDR credits. And if it's a 25-year timeline, you will need 300 IDR credits. With all of this, they need to basically quote folks on what their monthly payment will be. So what you need to do is every 11 months, you will need to provide updated information or recertify your income and family size to your loan servicer or to the department so that your monthly payments can be adjusted for the next 12 months. And this can be done online at studentaid.gov or through paper form, although we do recommend doing it online. The good news is that if your wages change, whether if they decrease or you become unemployed, you can recertify your lower income at any point to secure those lower monthly payments. So those are just some of the benefits of income-driven repayment plans as we're talking about them tonight. Taxes. So when it comes to these income-driven repayment plans, one of the things to consider is when you're filing taxes. So if you file married, file jointly, both you and your spouse's income will be taken into consideration. Now, if you're separated or divorced, or you can't reasonably access your spouse's current income, the department will not factor in your spouse's income or their loan debt when calculating your IDR payment. If you file separately, the spousal income is not going to be considered. Now, earlier today, Natalia mentioned the tax-free student loan forgiveness. So what we've been saying in many of our emails and in our communications is that on December 31st, 2025, that is the end of a provision from the American Rescue Act that essentially protected borrowers who were having their loans forgiven through income-driven repayment forgiveness on the federal level. On December 31st, 2025, it's the end. So beginning January 1st, 2026, anyone whose loans are forgiven through IDR forgiveness, not public service loan forgiveness, are going to be taxed on that forgiveness. However, if you qualified today for loan forgiveness, but your loans are not discharged until 2026, you are going to be exempt from having that taxation on your loan forgiveness. So that's really important to think about here. Another question I saw here is IRS integration. IRS integration is essentially you allowing the Department of Education and the IRS to communicate with one another about your income information so that you can be properly quoted on what your monthly payment will be. If you provide that consent, the department is going to pull that income information and you won't have to manually upload or document when you are applying for your income-driven repayment plan. However, you will still need to recertify your income every 11 months. And we are seeing that folks that apply for another repayment plan using this IRS integration is actually having their application processed within days and weeks versus months for folks who are not using the integration. Another question that we see often is what is the difference between IDR and IBR? Now, IDR is the umbrella term. It's a category and the name of the overall program. And then when we look at things like IBR or pay, which is pay as you earn, ICR, income contingent repayment, and save, these are all types of IDR plans. I know there's a lot of acronyms that we're throwing out there, so I just want to take a moment to explain that, but those are all variations or types of IDR plans. And so again, what are the IDR plans? Sabrina Ashley mentioned them earlier. There's pay as you earn, which looks at 10% of your discretionary income over a timeline of 20 years. There's a newer version of IBR, which began for loans issued after July 1st, 2014, which looks at 10% of discretionary income over 20 years. There's the older version of IBR, which is income-based repayment, looking at 15% over 25 years. And then there's income contingent repayment, which looks at 20% of your discretionary income over 25 years. Now, Sabrina Ashley before was alluding to partial financial hardship. It's worth noting that the repayment plan IBR, income-based repayment, used to have a partial financial hardship component where if you had a really high income and a low balance, you didn't qualify for IBR, but the department has changed that rule. So now everyone can apply for the income-based repayment plan. We don't know for sure if it's been changed on studentaid.gov. What we are seeing is that on the loan simulator, it's telling people that they're ineligible. But again, that is inaccurate. You should be ineligible for IBR or eligible, excuse me, for IBR. So keep that into consideration. And also the pay as you earn or pay plan does have a financial hardship restriction. So not everyone does qualify for that plan. Now, how to identify monthly payments on different plans? There are a few options that folks can use. I did share it in the chat earlier, so if you need that link, you can find it there. There's the loan simulator on studentaid.gov. Again, a downside to this is that it may show inaccurate results for plan eligibility as well as monthly payment amounts, although it's been getting pretty good at that. The calculations for the standard plan also tend to be pretty accurate. And if you don't have time to call your servicer or you just can't get a hold of your servicer on the phone, the loan simulator might be the best tool to use. Now, if you have a little bit more time or you have a few more questions, you could try calling your servicer to see if they can provide that information over the phone. We are hearing that folks have long wait times in trying to call their servicer, so we understand that that could be a downside to that. And now one of the questions that we recommend you ask is what repayment plans am I eligible for and what are the estimated monthly payments? If you are specifically working towards public service loan forgiveness, you need to make sure that you are applying for a plan that is eligible, that will maintain eligibility for the program. So if you're calling your servicer, be sure to indicate that that is the case here. And then we also shared a calculator for the EdCap tool, which is also helpful, but it does not, it cannot confirm which plans you are eligible for, and it only does provide income-driven repayment options, not any of the other fixed alternative plan options. Now, I believe on the next slide here, we're actually going to take a look at the loan simulator. So just to walk folks through, if whether you're in SAVE or you're considering switching plans, you would go to studentaid.gov. That toolbar at the top has that loan repayment option, and then you can find the loan simulator. Once you click on that, it will take you to the tool. This will be the first thing that you'll see here. We recommend you select the first option, which is I want to find the best student loan repayment strategy. Once you click on that, it will bring you to a checklist. And on the checklist on the next slide, it's going to have a series of questions. You'll select all that apply to you. So if you have a job or plan to get one, if you file taxes, if you're married, if you have children, if you save for retirement, select everything that applies, and then it will ask you questions a little bit more in depth. Here are just some examples. So for someone who indicated that they file taxes, that is what they're going to ask you. How do you file your taxes? For your salary, you can go ahead and put that in here. We do recommend that if you're filling out that section, the option or the second question on to that part says, how much do you expect your income to grow by each year? I always just recommend you put 0% instead of 3 or whatever it is that they currently have, just so that it doesn't confuse you or create any ranges that just don't make sense. So you'd go ahead through that checklist, and then the next page here, let's take a look at it. It will then have you confirm your current loan situation. So this was just something I was playing around with. It's a simulation that I did a demo. But in your case, your loans should all pop up here, all of them. If there's anything missing, you can just take a look, see what's going on here, but all of them should populate here. If you've indicated that you're married and that your spouse also is working, and has loans, you would have the option to manually upload your spouse's information here so that they can also take that into consideration when it comes to your monthly repayment options. And then if you are working towards public service loan forgiveness or you plan to work in public service loan forgiveness, they are going to ask you if you would like to see repayment options that would allow you to maintain eligibility. If that's the case, you can go ahead and select yes, but if you don't plan on using PSLF, you can just select no and move on. So then the next slide here, let's take a look at it. It's going to ask you this question: what is your primary repayment goal? My recommendation is that you select have a low monthly payment so that it will automatically show you the most affordable plan available to you. So going through the demo earlier today, it showed me that ICR for someone who's looking for public service loan forgiveness would result in a monthly payment of about $339. And then it says the payment period is up to 25 years. Now, I did see this question in the Q&A, so I want to address it really quickly. When you're going through the loan simulator, it's going to say payment period, and it's going to say up to 25 years or up to 20 years. That does not mean that if you've been in repayment on your student loans that you're going to have to pay an additional 25 years. What it's saying is that is the repayment timeline for someone who is enrolled in ICR. So if you were previously in the SAVE plan, let's say you were paying on it for 5 years, which you know isn't the case, but let's say you were paying on it for 5 years and the ICR timeline is 25. Once you enroll your loans into ICR out of SAVE, you would need an additional 20 years. The 5 years of progress that you have would transfer over from one repayment plan to another. So you're not having to start over. It does transfer progress. Now, what I do recommend is once you're looking at this, it will then have a blue button right underneath that says View and Compare All Plans. Once you go ahead and click on View and Compare All Plans, you'll see every option that you are eligible for, which we'll see on the next slide. So on the left-hand side here, those were all of the options that populated for me in terms of eligibility. So income contingent repayment, the extended graduated repayment plan, the graduated repayment plan, the extended fixed repayment plan, and the standard repayment plan. When you click on View Full Plan, it will tell you whether or not it qualifies for public service loan forgiveness. Of these options, only the ICR plan is eligible for public service loan forgiveness. The others are not. Now, if we're looking on the right-hand side, underneath these options are actually going to show you ineligible plans. So I went ahead and clicked on that, and it told me that I was not eligible for pay as you earn, and I was not eligible for IBR. Now, as I said earlier, the IBR being an ineligible plan is actually
All right, folks, I think we are having some technical difficulties. Sabrina, Ashley, can you jump in?
Sure. Okay, I am going to restart this slide here. So these screenshots are essentially what you're going to see on the eligibility side of the loan simulator. So on this top left slide, you can see that I believe this was Sabrina's account when she went through it. So you can see that this person was eligible for income contingent repayment. You can see all of the information like the monthly payments, the total amount that you will pay, how much will be forgiven under public service loan forgiveness if she was going to stay in public service loan forgiveness, and then also the repayment timeline. And you can see that for extended graduated repayment, graduated repayment, and then also there is extended fixed repayment plan and the standard plan. So here on the right-hand side, you can also see your ineligible plans. So if you think that you might be eligible for something and you don't see it there, you might want to click on the ineligible plans just to verify that the loan simulator is giving you all of the plans. We have heard some issues there in the past, so you can see that this person's not eligible for the pay-as-you-earn repayment plan, and it will just not give any information there, and then as well as the income-based repayment plan here. And then we do have this screenshot here taken from student8.gov, and this is just stating that what we were both kind of talking about earlier, that the One Big Beautiful Bill Act will allow borrowers who don't have partial financial hardship to now enroll in the income-based repayment plan, which was previously not a thing. You did have to have a partial financial hardship aspect to be able to enroll in the IBR plan. So again, they are working on updating their systems, and they did give a date of December 2025, obviously later in the month. So folks might be seeing right now that they're ineligible for the income-based repayment plan. Hopefully this banner will be updated in the coming weeks, but we will definitely keep folks posted when it is updated. And folks might be able to enroll in income-based repayment plan when they previously were not able to do so. Okay. This
And
next
with that, I
slide.
think we can give it
Yes.
back to Sabrina Calazan, who is back on. Thank you so much, Sabrina Ashley.
Thank you, Sabrina Ashley, and apologies, folks, for any issues here. Another question we did see here in the Q&A is, how do I figure out the IDR credit counts? So we have seen this trick. Again, this does not work for everyone, so I just want to let you know that if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It's just something that we've seen time and time again. So if someone could actually drop this in the chat, that might be helpful. But if it doesn't work for you, in the Zoom chat, we will be sure to email it to you after the fact, after the workshop. So just keep an eye out for that. But essentially, you will need to be logged into studentaid.gov. You need to be logged in. You would then paste this link into a new tab. And then once you do that, it's going to look like a big jumbled mess. Don't be alarmed, that is typical. And then you would click on a small box at the top left that says Pretty Print to make it easier to read. So to get a visual on that, on the next slide here, this is what it will look like. So it's going to look a little bit scary, like on the left-hand image here. That's where you would click on Pretty Print in the top left corner. Then we would go ahead and look at what appears to be the right-hand side once you click on Pretty Print. So it does, it organizes it a little bit easier for us to see. So what we're looking for is the word type, and then it will be followed by the income-driven repayment plan or by the plan itself. So in the first option here, we're looking at type, and then it says ICR. There, you would just look down a few more rows and you'll see qualifying payment counts. It says that this person has 54 credits towards that repayment plan. If we look a few more rows down, there is forgiveness required payments. That's what I was talking about earlier about the IDR credit count and the terms. So ICR is a plan that requires 25 years or 300 credits. So in this case, it just reinforces the fact that you need 300 credits. And this person, because they have 54, they have a remaining 246 credit payments or credits remaining until they reach the 300. That would make them eligible for loan forgiveness. So I recommend folks go through this. It goes through ICR, there's IBR, there's a newer version of IBR, there's save, and there's pay as you earn. It gives you a sense of where you are in your repayment. If it says forgiveness remaining payments 0, that means that you've completed the your IDR payments if you've reached the threshold. If you are currently in save and it says that you have 0 forgiveness remaining payments, we absolutely recommend that you switch into another income-driven repayment plan so that you could have your loans forgiven, especially with this December 31st deadline. You would be eligible for forgiveness now, so you'd want to apply sooner rather than later. We definitely recommend that you do so. So this is just a tip for folks. We'll again include this in a follow-up email to you tomorrow, and you'll be able to test this out yourself. And if you are looking to apply for an IDR plan, you can do so at studentaid.gov. If you applied for a plan before March 2025, if you submitted an application requesting the lowest monthly payment, or in the past you've applied for SAVE and your application is still pending, you will need to resubmit your application. They are discarding any pending applications for SAVE, as well as those with the lowest monthly payment option. And for folks who applied before March 2025, there's just a good chance that they've lost your application and all of the shuffle and all of the backlogs. So if you are looking to apply for an income-driven repayment plan, you will need your permanent and/or mailing address, family size information. If you choose not to opt into the IRS integration, like we mentioned earlier, you'll need to provide income documentation, so W-2, a pay stub, anything like that. And you also must know what plan that you want to enroll in. So the lowest monthly payment option was removed from the IDR application, so that's no longer an option. When it comes to processing, it can take a few days to a few months. We've heard from folks who've been waiting a really long time for their application. And again, the applications opting into the IRS integration are being processed fast, very quickly compared to those who are manually documenting income. Also, when you're applying for an income-driven repayment plan, you should be placed into a processing forbearance once you submit your application so that you're not billed during that time. If you're not placed into one and you're billed automatically with a really high payment, it looks like they probably just put you in the standard plan. And so in that case, you need to call your servicer and demand to be placed into a processing forbearance. I believe the next slide here is on consolidation. So what is consolidation? As Natalia mentioned earlier, some servicers are incorrectly telling people that they need to consolidate to get out of SAVE. Consolidation is essentially the converting of older loans like a FFELP loan, Perkins, into a direct loan, or just combining multiple loans into a single loan. When you are consolidating, you are creating a new loan and therefore will receive a new payoff date. Consolidations can take anywhere from 30 to more than 60 days to process. We do not recommend anyone consolidate their loans on or after July 1st, 2026, because that will affect your repayment plan options. You will lose access to IBR, ICR, and pay, and have only a new version of the standard plan and the wrap plan. This is something we're going to discuss next week. So if you want to learn more about what's to come, I recommend that you sign up for that webinar next week. Some other things to consider with consolidation, you can consolidate a single loan, so a single parent plus loan, FFELP consolidation, or Perkins can be consolidated. If you're consolidating an existing direct consolidation loan, you must have at least one other loan that you are combining it with because it's already in its final state of being a consolidation loan. If you do want to consolidate your loans, you can do so at studentaid.gov. And it's important to note that due to the current regulations, if you choose to consolidate right now, you may erase some or all of your repayment history and public service loan forgiveness progress by creating this new loan. This is going to extend your payoff date and reset your IDR credit count to 0. Be very careful with that. If you've been paying for a really long time, you're going to have to start all over if you choose to consolidate. So be very, very careful. And it will also result in a weighted average of PSLF credits. So you will lose some public service loan forgiveness progress as well. Folks must submit an employer certification form before submitting a consolidation application. So also be mindful of that if you're consolidating for public service loan forgiveness. And I believe the next slide is on Parent Plus. Something else to take into consideration is if you have unconsolidated direct Parent Plus loans, meaning you have not consolidated them in the past to enroll them in a repayment plan, but you want to, we recommend that you act quickly. Because of the new changes that are coming, July 1st, 2026 is a cutoff for anyone who has not consolidated and had the loan issued before that date. So we are recommending that folks not wait a very long time don't wait past the spring because there's a very good chance that your application to consolidate is not processed and issued before July 1st, 2026. And that would mean that you would lose access to the income-driven repayment plan options. Any Parent Plus loans issued or consolidated on or after July 1st, 2026 will result in only access to the standard plan. So if your income changes, if your family size changes, none of that will matter, and your payment will remain the same on standard, which could be significantly higher than an income-driven repayment option. So if you consolidate by that date, or if you already have consolidated Parent Plus loans, you can enroll them in income contingent repayment. This plan will only be in existence until July 1st, 2028, not to confuse folks, but that plan will be phased out at some point. Just be mindful of that. And then the income-based repayment plan is also becoming available to Parent Plus loans in the coming months. And it also may be a more generous plan because it looks at either 10 or 15% of your discretionary income versus the 20% on ICR. But what we've been seeing and hearing from the Department of Education is that if you have a Parent Plus loan, you will need to actually enroll it in the income contingent repayment plan and make at least one payment while enrolled in the plan before you can then move to IBR. It's a little bit confusing and we don't exactly know the status of that. Some servicers are honoring that, some servicers are not. So if you have any questions, we recommend reaching out to your servicer and asking about that. All right, what to do if you are struggling to repay your loans? We know this is a reality for many folks, so let's talk about the options here. What if I can't afford my payments? If you've checked out all of the different income-driven repayment plan options and your eligibility, but you still can't afford the minimum monthly payment, you may want to consider applying for a forbearance or a deferment as temporary emergency options to keep you out of default. Now, a forbearance allows you to temporarily stop making monthly payments or to make smaller payments. Usually, there is no progress towards forgiveness or a loan payoff during a forbearance, and interest does accrue during this time. Some folks may choose to pay the interest during a forbearance, but if you are struggling financially, you may choose to not do so. You can also apply for something called a deferment, which allows you to also temporarily stop making payments. Interest also does accrue, but on some loan types, not all. And also, deferment has specific eligibility requirements and forms for folks to fill out. So, if you're undergoing cancer treatment, economic hardship, rehabilitation training, or post-active duty student deferment, all of those are just specific reasons to be granted a deferment. So again, these are options if you can't afford your payment and an IDR plan is not an option for you. And what happens if you don't make payments? So the first day that you're past due, your payment is officially delinquent, and the loan will remain delinquent until the missed payments are made up, or you request a deferment or forbearance to be granted retroactively to cover the delinquent period. Now, after 90 days of being past due, the delinquency is going to be reported on your credit to the major national credit bureaus. So if you see a drop in your credit score, that could be a reason why that happened. And if your loan continues to be past due 270 days, which is about 9 months, the loan is officially in default. Consequences of default include tax refunds being withheld, wage garnishment, ineligibility for federal assistance, and et cetera. There's other consequences as well. There are options to get out of default, including loan rehabilitation or loan consolidation. And it's also worth noting that if you have federal Perkins loans, those can be considered or placed into default even one day after missing payments. So these are just some of the consequences of default, but on the next slide here, we're going to talk about what you can do to get out of default. Or first, we're going to talk about how to know if you are in default. So if you're uncertain about where things stand, if you log into studentaid.gov and you are in default, there will be a big red banner at the top, like you see here in the image, saying you have X number of loans in default. So in this case, the person has 3 loans in default, and you can see that right here. So that is a clear way to know that. If you are still uncertain, you can call your loan servicer, and if they have no information, there is a group called the Default Resolution Group that can provide you with more information. So on the next slide here, we'll actually see that information. So if you are in default and you're looking to get out, there's a few options. There's loan rehabilitation, in which you make 9 on-time monthly payments over the course of 10 months. You would work with your servicer to determine an affordable monthly payment amount for that time. Once that is done, the collections would essentially stop, and this is a one-time opportunity. There's also loan consolidation. As we talked about, the process of converting or combining your loans. That is the fastest way for you to get the loan out of default and back into good standing. But in order to qualify, you must either agree to repay under an income-driven repayment plan, or you would need to make 3 full on-time payments before you choose to consolidate the loan. Again, you can consolidate a single loan as long as it's not already a single direct consolidation loan, because that cannot be reconsolidated. A few other tips for folks in default is that if the Department of Education or the default resolution group sends you an email, please do not ignore the email, because it's very timely. But if you act within the first 60 days of being in default or being notified of this, getting a notice, you can actually stop collections from being turned on against you. We've seen people get welcome to default letters, which is just horrible, and being informed that they are going to be pursued by Treasury offset. If you call the default resolution group and start to take action, they will actually stop collections from turning on. So that will stop wage garnishment from beginning or your tax refund from being seized. So these are just really important tips for folks to know. If you are in default, we recommend that you explore existing loan forgiveness opportunities. So see whether something like total and permanent disability discharge is an option for you, or closed school discharge. Soon we're going to talk about some of the loan forgiveness options here, and that includes some of these programs. So that is a possibility. Also, to receive assistance or to learn more about your options, call the default resolution group at 1-800-621-3115. Also, if you can't locate your loans, if you try calling your servicer and they say, "I'm sorry, we don't have your loans," there's a good chance that the loans were moved to a default servicer or a guarantee agency for collection. So calling DRG is going to help you figure out your next steps and who you can contact to figure out how to get out of default. So those are just some updates here for folks who are currently in default. And just a quick explainer here, because we've been talking about different kinds of forbearances. We just went over a regular forbearance or a hardship or discretionary forbearance. This is typically used when folks are struggling to afford their payments. You will need to apply for this. It's not automatic. You can do so through mail, online, or on the phone with your servicer. Interest does accrue, and the time spent will not count towards IDR or PSLF forgiveness. The SAVE administrative forbearance was an involuntary forbearance that all folks enrolled in SAVE were placed into automatically. No payments were required during the time in this forbearance, and interest began accruing as of August 1st of this year. You will not receive public service loan forgiveness or IDR credits for the time in this forbearance. And a processing forbearance, as I mentioned, for folks looking to switch from one plan to another. Folks who apply for an IDR plan are placed into this type of a forbearance when your servicer is processing your application. You're supposed to be automatically placed into it, but if you're not, you can call your servicer and request to be placed into it. You can be in it for up to 60 days and have that time count towards public service loan forgiveness credits, but we have seen folks struggle to get those credits to count, so just be mindful of that. And interest does accrue. And if you're looking to request a discretionary forbearance, it's recommended that you call your servicer for that to happen. Okay, that was a lot of information, but I know we also have more important information with public service loan forgiveness. So with that, I'm going to toss it over to Angel.
Thank you so much, Sabrina. So let's go ahead and jump into public service loan forgiveness. Saw there was a lot of questions in the chat, so let's go ahead and get those answered for y'all. So PSLF, public service loan forgiveness, what is it? It is a program that started in October of 2007. It was a program that had bipartisan support created by Congress that essentially goes ahead and forgives any outstanding balance on your student loans after you make 120 cumulative, not consecutive, cumulative payments, plus the time for application approval. So this program is really beneficial in the way that if you enroll in an income-driven repayment plan and you pursue public service loan forgiveness, you receive the maximum benefit. Now, a couple questions to ask for public service loan forgiveness. Number one, do you have a direct loan? Number two, does your employer qualify? And we'll go over that in the next couple slides. Also, are you in a qualifying repayment plan? And you must also document your employment using the Public Service Loan Forgiveness form, which you could access on your studentaid.gov dashboard. Once you reach those 120 credits, so those 10 years of cumulative payments, you go through the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Help tool and you click the little button that says, I've completed 120 credits. Now, what qualifies for public service loan forgiveness? I saw a couple of questions in the chat around this. For loans, we're looking at direct subsidized loans, direct unsubsidized loans, direct graduate plus loans, direct parent plus loans, and direct consolidation loans. For repayment plans, the 10-year standard plan, the income contingent repayment plan, otherwise known as ICR, pay as you earn, otherwise known as pay, and income-based repayment, otherwise known as IBR, all qualify for public service loan forgiveness. For employer, all levels of government, tribal, federal, state, local, go ahead and qualify for PSLF. 501c3 nonprofits, and other critical public service such as firefighters, first responders, etc. Now, what does not qualify for PSLF? In the next slide, we can go ahead and see that for loans, those older FFEL loans do not qualify. Perkins loans do not qualify. Private loans do not qualify. And time in default does not qualify. However, one thing to note is that if you do have those FFELP loans or Perkins loans, you can go ahead and consolidate them into a direct loan so they become eligible for PSLF. And if you do have a defaulted loan, once it's taken out of default, you could go ahead and now be eligible for PSLF as long as it is a direct loan. For repayment plans that do not qualify, fixed alternative plans, the ones that were covered by Sabrina Ashley, are the standard plan that is longer than 10 years does not qualify, and those times in deferments and forbearances such as school deferment. For employers, government contractor, if you work for the government but are not a direct employee, you do not qualify. 501c4 nonprofits and political groups do not qualify. Labor unions do not qualify as an employer. You could be part of a labor union, but you cannot work for the labor union to qualify for PSLF. Just wanted to go ahead and clear that up. One other thing is that PSLF is written by law that it is tax free. That's a question I've been seeing a lot in the chat. That even though IDR, income driven repayment forgiveness, will be taxable starting January 1st of 2026, public service loan forgiveness will continue to be tax free at a federal level. So that is something to go ahead and keep in mind. And rest assured, if you're working towards PSLF, you should not be getting taxed at a federal level. Now, the PSLF buyback program. So what you could do, there were some questions about this in the chat as well. You can buy back certain months in your payment history to make them eligible qualifying payments for public service loan forgiveness. Right now, we really don't know whether or not the time spent in save will count towards buyback, but specifically, you can buy back those months that don't count as qualifying payment because you weren't eligible, such as in deferment or forbearance status. However, the time spent in an in-school deferment cannot be bought back, and it can also be used for an ineligible repayment plan. How to benefit? The buyback program is only available when you have an estimated 120 months of qualifying employment, and buying back months in forbearance or deferment would result in PSLF forgiveness. So if you're like really close to there, you have that estimated amount, that's how you would benefit from it. You have to submit a buyback request and make an extra payment at least as much as what they would have owed under an income-driven repayment plan during the months that you are trying to buy back. And one thing to keep in mind, there is a huge backlog of PSLF buyback. So we is something you have to keep in mind if you are interested in pursuing buyback. Now, PSLF, some looming changes. The Department of Education finalized a rule that's set to change employers' eligibility for public service loan forgiveness starting in July of next year. So the Department of Education is essentially working to disqualify groups. And again, this is language from the Department of Education, not that of SDCC, violating federal immigration law, facilitating illegal immigration, violating state law, providing gender affirming care for transgender youth. Essentially, these employers are at risk of being affected by these rules. So this will go ahead and impact centers or hospitals that provide gender affirming care or nonprofits that support immigrants, universities with DEI policies, and those states, governments, cities that are sanctuary cities and states. So for an example, to put this into perspective, if you're like an administrative assistant for a hospital, and the Department of Education now deems that hospital to be an eligible employer for PSLF moving forward, you will no longer accrue PSLF credits since you are now working for an ineligible employer. And also, another big thing to flag is that the dates are subject to change. We do have that July 2026 date on there, but it's subject to change since there are a couple of lawsuits that are ongoing challenging this rule. Now, what would happen once this rule is in effect? So, we kind of touched on this earlier. If the employer is deemed ineligible, they remain ineligible for 10 years unless the employer decides to comply with the Department of Education in this so-called corrective action plan. Essentially, no payment made by the borrower would count towards PSLF for any month following the determination that that employer is now deemed ineligible. But the past credits will remain intact. So any previously accrued PSLF credits will not be tampered with. The Department of Education would also be required to inform employees that a qualifying employer has lost eligibility for public service loan forgiveness or is at risk of losing eligibility for public service loan forgiveness. And borrowers cannot appeal this decision. Once it's been determined, it's final say from the Department of Ed. Like I mentioned, there's now 3 lawsuits challenging this rule. And our recommendation here at SDCC is to go ahead and use the PSLF help tool now and again sometime in June to get the most updated PSLF credit count ahead of any potential rule implementation. Now we're going to go ahead and cover some additional forms of loan forgiveness, cancellation, and discharge. So additional forms of loan cancellation, forgiveness, and discharge. We have total and permanent disability discharge. It provides full forgiveness on your federal student loans if you are totally or permanently disabled. The borrower must provide documentation from either the VA, the Veterans Affairs Office, Social Security Administration, or a medical professional. One big change is that there is no longer a 3-year income monitoring period for total and permanent disability discharge, and borrowers qualify if you have a mental or health condition that is expected or has lasted 5 years and is preventing them from getting substantially gainful employment. Additional forms of loan forgiveness and discharge also include borrower defense to repayment, teacher loan forgiveness, death discharge, closed school discharge, unpaid refund, false certification, and Perkins loans forgiveness. What can folks do right now? Some recommendations is please know who your loan servicer is and have access to an account on their website, to your account on their website, and also know what repayment plan you're enrolled in, especially with the breaking news from Save. It's really important that you know what repayment plan you're enrolled with to have to make any actions according to that. Save any communications and documentation you receive from your servicer, whether it's screenshots, printing, anything along those lines, alongside any information that has details of how many PSLF and IDR credits you have. So it could be a screenshot of that link where we had you all look at your credits. That will suffice as well. Anything you have, go ahead and document it. And Parent Plus loan borrowers who would like to enroll their loans in an income-driven repayment plan will need to consolidate their Parent Plus loans and have them issued before July 1st of 2026 to do so. If you have any issues or complaints, you can submit them here at your local representative's office. So your elected members of Congress, you can go ahead and send a complaint or issues over to them. We are also going to share a casework tool that will allow you to do so. If we could please drop it in the chat. Also, your state AG offices, those are pretty good resources as well. Your local or state student loan ombudsperson will be going ahead and sharing that in a future slide where you're able to look it up. Your servicer website, there is sometimes a chat and messaging feature. You call them, email them to go ahead and share any of those issues or complaints. And also the Department of Education's Help Center, you could go ahead and look it on there as well. Also, another big thing is please be very wary and careful of debt relief scams. There's very evil people in the world that like to take advantage of borrowers, and it usually starts by offering a loan consolidation or debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. If it sounds too good to be true, it is probably a scam. You will not hear, oh, you have to send X amount of money and we'll get your loans forgiven. That does not work. Predatory practices, like I mentioned, include upfront freeze. If you claim to be, they claim to be the Department of Ed or those promises of loan forgiveness. The Department of Education will never directly contact you demanding you to pay an upfront fee for loan forgiveness, so be mindful of that. And just be very wary of any communication that seems too fishy or unofficial. Also, if you refinance your student loans with a private lender, you will use access to all federal student loan benefits and programs. So before you go ahead and, you know, go ahead and explore that option, just keep that in mind that you will lose access to those benefits and programs. And if you want to continue to get these updates, this is not a shameless plug. It's genuinely a great way to stay informed and receive the most up-to-date information pertaining to the student loan landscape that is so rapidly changing. Join our mailing list. You can visit SDCC's website, studentdebtcrisis.org, and follow us on debtcrisis.org across all platforms. And like our amazing team mentioned earlier, there is going to be another workshop this month. It's the last one of the year, in which we will go ahead and go over the major overhaul of the student loan system. So if we could go ahead and drop that in the chat, please, that'd be much appreciated, where we go over details of, for example, more in detail about SAVE and any updates that happen between now and next Tuesday. And 2026, we are going to be providing a vast array of workshops, so with some amazing content to make sure you're all prepared with the latest information. And like I mentioned, this is the list of resources that we're going to go ahead and share once we send this recording out tomorrow. And with that, I'll go ahead and toss it back to Sabrina Calazans to close us off.
Thank you, Angel, and thank you all for joining us today. I know that was a lot of information that we covered. As a reminder, there is going to be an email sent out to all of you tomorrow with some links, with information, so we'll be sure to send that all out to you. It'll also be posted to our YouTube. Again, thank you so much for your patience. There were so many questions and so many folks on, more than 500 folks were on. So this is really great to see so much interest in all of this. And again, as Angel said, next week we'll be talking more about the upcoming changes. We'll circle back with any new changes that we know about SAVE and hopefully get folks some answers. But again, thank you for joining us this evening. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day and we will be in touch. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.